just getting started here. This is not the normal studio setting that I'm able to do this live stream in. So tonight will be quite a bit different. I'm doing it more closer to home here, just in a outbuilding here on the property. And it's always possible it could get disturbed by kids or animals or something like that. So you never really quite know for sure. They aren't used to having me do the live streams at home. I'm usually able to get into the studio, but did not work out that way today. So also, I'm probably going to be launching my videos a little bit later in the week because I wasn't able to film them today either. So that's just how it goes. But we will try to see if we can do a Ask Me Anything live stream once again. And it'll be a little different. I won't be able to show you the questions on the screen down below like I normally do. And it's just a different setting here. And we'll try this out. So I kind of wanted to get this started a little bit earlier just to see if I was going to have any technical problems with it. So hopefully it's not going to be too bad, and we'll be able to kind of move along, and hopefully I'll be able to get to your questions. I'm going to be looking over here to get to the questions when you ask them, and so let me just get this set out here, and that should work, I think, a little bit better if I do it this way. And then I'll be able to actually be able to see your questions and do my best to answer them. No guarantees I'm going to answer them the way you want to, or that I'll have the best answer, but I'll do my best to go along. It is going to be a little bit harder if you're used to watch my show. Usually you're used to seeing the questions down below as I go to answer them, but it will be a little bit easier for me to spot your questions if you use the @WeTheGoverned. It'll just be a little bit easier for me to spot it as I pull it out of the questions there. And it looks like some people were starting to post some comments there today. Now, for those of you who weren't paying attention to the news today was the day that Bob Ferguson did sign the absurd and ridiculously bloated budget for Washington State, the largest increase in taxes cumulatively in the history of the state of Washington. And so he is definitely going to be known as the big tax man. That is who he is. He may have pretended to claim that he didn't really want to have higher taxes, but of course that's what he signed today anyway. So for those who had high hopes that he would cut out some of those taxes, he did not do that. He also signed in today which was not unexpected, but was the abusive Jamie Peterson bill, basically essentially gutting the Parents' Bill of Rights and ensuring that parents have no right to know what the state wants to do to your kids or whatever other special interests want to do to your kids. So that bill, which is obviously generating, I saw Brian Haywood out there on Let's Go Washington, also generating pushback from their standpoint in attempting to go back and again, just go head to head on that issue. That is a stunningly like 90-10 issue in the state. So it does seem to be the hill though that the Democrats want to die on. And so by aligning themselves with basically as hostile to parents and children as you can be, they do seem to be defining themselves as the party who hate your kids, don't like parents, and certainly don't like girls' sports. And that's the road they're going down. That's the road they seem to want to die on. Real quick update. If I saw you since the last live stream I might have seen you out in Yakima. We had a good group at the Doge training class that we did out there. Friday morning, you probably saw I did a video about serving a petition on Governor Inslee, and that one was for the basically from the Sportsmen's Alliance Foundation. Years ago, I've met with them, and this was a long records request and a research project that they were doing on just the corrupt and obviously horrific people that Inslee had appointed to the Fish and Wildlife Commission. And so the long and the short of that one is essentially it's going to court. It's probably going to be one of the largest Public Records Act cases in the history of the state of Washington. Just extensive problems with those very obviously corrupt people who were appointed to that commission, at least 4 of them that were documented in this petition. And I was trying to demonstrate the video that I produced there, just how to go in and what the process entails. I mean, it's an Article 1, Section 4 petition that you file to the state of Washington. You're allowed to petition your governor or your government in general and ask them to correct problems that exist in government. It's not a guarantee that they do. They're not obligated to do so. It's just that it simply notifies them so they can't pretend like they don't know or pretend like they have no idea that any of these problems exist out there. It's very similar, actually, to if you were ever followed the path that Wilberforce went down in England in trying to repeal slavery. It's very similar to those petitions that they used to submit on that process. And of course, if you're familiar with the American Revolution and some of the history of the Founding Fathers, it's also guaranteed in the federal Constitution the right to petition your governor, your elected officials. And so it's essentially in that context, not to be confused with an initiative, which is very different. So, and there's a different legal process there. And so I was just simply trying to take away some of the mystery around it and just demonstrate the process that you would go through and go and hand delivering it to the governor's office. And the funny thing was, and I kind of forgot about this on Fridays, but when I went to deliver it to his office, you had all these kids, tours of kids kind of coming by, you know, taking a tour of the governor's offices at the same time. So you probably saw that a little bit in the video, but if you come by there, especially post-session, there's a lot of these tours that kids go through. If you grew up in Washington State and you went to school here, you probably went on those tours. I know I did when I was younger. And when I had my own kids that age, I would go along with them as a chaperone, and just like many other parents. And so I happened to run into a couple parents there that knew me with their kids at the Capitol. So it was kind of funny just doing that ahead of time. Also, I just wanted to, filming wasn't really perfect there, but it was just a way of quickly just showing, you know, nothing fancy to it, just showing what the process is. And again, it's not my petition, it's a Sportsmen Alliance Foundation petition. They've done a great job, and I did link to those the documents actually in the video down below. So if you haven't seen that, feel free to go back and look at it. But I do think it kind of takes away some of the mystery of the whole process. Obviously, Ferguson isn't obligated to get rid of corrupt officials, but if he doesn't, then he owns their corruption. And regardless, the state's going to have to pay for the hiding all the public records, and the corrupt people will have to pay any fines that get levied against them for violating the Open Public Meetings Act. And obviously, based on the investigation that seems to be ongoing and the litigation discovery in that process, I anticipate that there will be a lot more to talk about on that story. Inslee does seem to have done a good job finding the worst people he could find in the state of Washington and put them on that commission. And their sloppiness, I think, is very self-evident. Another thing, too, before we jump into the questions, and I'm surprised there's a lot of them already popping up here. I might have seen you in Spokane Friday morning or Saturday morning at the Doge train out there. That was that was kind of an abbreviated version of it. If you were there, I was doing that for the Citizens Alliance for Property Rights out of Spokane group. Still fun to see a lot of good people out there. I really love the fact that there was somebody in the audience who had worked in the Department of Justice at the Spokane office in the past. And so I felt that some of his questions and comments were actually pretty insightful for that group. The other thing is I might have seen you at the Pierce County Lincoln Day dinner on Saturday night, where I was the MC. And so hopefully I felt, you know, the only thing you have to do as an MC, among other things, is just make sure you get done in time, which we actually did that night. So I felt pretty good about that. Tomorrow, Wednesday, I'm going to be at the Skagit County, kind of the cowboy church up there on Heritage Ranch, doing another Doge class. If you want to know more details about the Doge class, go to wethegovern.com. You'll be able to see that there. Wednesday, June 4th, I'll be in the Tri-Cities doing another Doge class out there. I don't think I've posted the location yet, so I need to go confirm that and make sure that's posted. Also, June 7th, that Saturday, I'll be speaking at the Lincoln Day dinner in Ellensburg for the Kittitas County Republicans. And June 9th, I think I have a noon speaking engagement this Monday, speaking to Silverdale Seebeck Republican Women's Club, also June 16th. This is new. I haven't added this to the calendar yet, but I'll do that probably tonight. The Snohomish County Doge training class at Marysville. We've done one in Marysville already, but this is a second one, new group of people, more people wanted to go to it. So, and this will be at the same church, the Reset Church that we've been to in the past. And then June 19th, I'll be at the San Juan County doing the Doge training class there. June 26th, we'll be doing a Doge training class in Kitsap County, and there's more, but into July, but that's all I'm going to tell you about right now. And let's get into these questions because there's a bunch of them here. Beth is asking a question. Do Governor Ferguson's kids go to public school, which would mean the new law gutting parental rights apply to them? And actually, I'm not sure of the answer on that. I should know. I remember he's talked about a daughter that's in track, and he hasn't really explained if he'd enjoy watching his daughter get beat up by boys in sports. But I guess he'll get to find out, since that's something he likes to dump on other people. But I don't know for sure if his kids actually do go to public school. And that's a good question. Let's see. Trying to find these questions here. CyberZen Music. I'm a legal dummy, but if a state can't infringe on the First Amendment without a federal hat in the ring immediately, then why is the Second Amendment different? And let me see why I'm having a problem seeing you. Why is the Second Amendment different, where the states can do what they want? Well, neither the First nor the Second nor the Fourth or the Fifth or any of the other amendments, federal amendments to the Constitution, can be infringed. Now that's, there are obviously limits that generally have been interpreted over the years, due process of law and all that, but they absolutely can have a federal case in hand. I mean, the one challenge of trying to take on Second Amendment cases in the federal or in the state court system is that almost universally, with very few exceptions, almost all the judges are thoroughly corrupted on this issue. I mean, they would never, ever support your right to defend yourself. And it's something that's been weeded out of the judicial branch, and so the problem is your judges are just not capable of ruling in any kind of accurate or honest way on that subject. It's not the only one. Anytime you deal with issues that are related to property rights, those judges are bad. Really, anything that has to do with your confrontation with government. If you're the little guy, the judges in Washington State just always go with the government. Their deference to big government is unlimited, and so they just let big government beat up on little people all the time. And that's kind of how the judges operate in Washington State. The worst judges are in Thurston County, but it's not just Thurston County. King, Pierce, Snohomish, almost everywhere. You'll occasionally have an outlier judge or a case that's so egregious, like the SeaTac case from a few years ago, where the staff were caught red-handed colluding to bankrupt and destroy property owners so that they could buy the property instead. But usually, outside of really extreme cases like that, where somebody had enough money to actually afford the $3 million of legal fees to get through the process, it was Jerry Kingen at the time, then in a case like that, they'll rule in favor of property rights. But most of the time, they'll ignore the Constitution, which is actually a good Constitution. It doesn't do any good when you have judges that can't read it or don't care. But when they choose to ignore it and then just impose their own rules, then the federal path is probably the best way to go. I would not generally do any legal cases in state court, even when you do get a ruling, as the Gator Guns ruling was in prevailed. They prevailed in Superior Court in the Gator Guns case. That you still have to go up to the Supreme Court, and they're thoroughly corrupted to a judge. So there's no way you're going to get anything honest from them. So you have to go federal. I mean, there's really no choice in the matter. You have to go up and do a federal case. The exception generally in the judiciary in Washington State is in two categories. There's kind of two buckets of cases that you could prevail on when it comes to rights or transparency of government. One is Public Records Act. Generally, the state Supreme Court and even the lower courts have generally been in favor of supporting the Public Records Act for a little while anyway. They still are at this point in time. And First Amendment cases actually do get some traction in Washington State at the state level. So you will get some of the judges still believe in the First Amendment and believe in free speech. And so for the handful, there's that, at least those are the two issues I would say that you'd be good at. If you go out and you commit mass murder, that's great. The judge will let you out early to go try again. It's just the way the whole thing operates here. So anyway, we went off a little bit of a tangent on that one. Somebody here who had a question, Roan W. asked, how do we recall Ferguson? Well, the recall statute's pretty clear. I know I've referenced this a few times in other comments. People have brought up, I noticed there were some comments in the comment section on the last video I did over the weekend of me serving that petition on Governor Ferguson's office. And people are saying, well, you should just recall Ferguson. And here's the thing with the recall statute. First of all, a recall is exponentially more difficult than just simply running a candidate for that position and prevailing with another candidate. It really is. Anybody that doesn't think that's true just hasn't seen or paid attention to that statute. The statute in Washington State requires you to get multiple levels of judicial approval of the recall facts, basically, presuming that it is malfeasance or misfeasance or violation of oath of office. I've never really seen them uphold a violation of oath of office as a justification for a recall, so that seems to be window dressing in the statute. But malfeasance and misfeasance will show up, and occasionally the judges, I mean, if you remember, they approved, the Supreme Court approved the Kashama-Sawant recall that occurred in the past. And there may be a good reason to justify the process of going through the recall, getting to that legal fight to be able to recall Ferguson. But I don't think that's as easy as you think. In a way, it would be easier with like Chris Reichdahl right now, who's head of the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. Now, you could probably succeed with the recall petition against him, just because he's been such a clown and has allowed himself to demonstrably fail in almost every aspect of his position and job. So the malfeasance and misfeasance is a little bit easier for him, particularly with the federal investigations that are going on into his office right now. And if there's some rulings that come out of those federal investigations on Title IX violations or Title VI violations or civil rights violations, which it seems likely, Chris Reichdahl is kind of a clown and he's not the brightest guy out there. And so he's just really making himself look more of a caricature than anything else. And obviously he doesn't care about kids or education. And under his watch, nobody's done a worse job with more money than Reichdahl. So he would be probably a pretty good candidate for a recall petition. And he's been in office long enough that you've built up a better history. In this position, Ferguson probably hasn't been there long enough, and we would just have to look at it closely. I'd like to see what the fact pattern is that people would put together to justify a recall petition. It doesn't matter whether I like Ferguson or not. The question is whether you could get two layers of the judiciary, first your Superior Court hearing, then usually jumps up to the Supreme Court to approve that recall. Now, sometimes they do. There's a recall petition moving through on a Camas City councilman down in a weird one. That one's a weird one. It was like he threw a rock at somebody on a trail and then being charged with threatening somebody with a gun on top of that. It was that one's a weird one. But it does seem the judge at the Superior Court level approved, if I remember right, like 4 of the 7 charges against him. So that one's advancing. Emily Klaus, who's a commissioner in Thurston County, has also got a recall petition that seems to be proceeding. So some people are able to be stupid enough and incompetent enough, because it's not just being dishonest or a bad person. That if that was the underlying justification for recall, you could recall almost everybody in public office. But the malfeasance and misfeasance definition, some of these guys seem to be fitting it. It's just that even then once the judge approves that, you have to go out and get all the signatures. And that's probably achievable in a like Thurston County. You could probably do that, and City of Camas, you could do that. Statewide, it would be very hard. Now, I'm assuming if you had approval, maybe the Let's Go Washington people would jump in there, and then you could probably get those signatures. But it's a little more challenging. I don't know that we've had a good example of a statewide recall petition approved in recent times. I should go back and look at this, but. I've been involved in recall efforts in the past, and most of the time it's a lot of energy. And frankly, if you just spent, what's astounding to me a little bit on our side is we spend almost no time, for those who care about liberty and freedom, we spend no time actually recruiting and training people to run for office. We just hope that somehow accidentally and by miracles they'll just appear out of the woodwork and run for office and be good. But yet that's probably a better place to spend some time and energy for the long haul, because if you build up a good farm team of people, then you can definitely have a better chance of prevailing in elections in the future. Let me keep going. Let's see. Yes, Tim Eyman was standing behind Ferguson today when he signed that stupid, terrible bill, the parents' rights bill, too. I thought Eyman would be there for the budget bill, so it surprised me to see him in that one. But and obviously Ferguson was not happy that Eyman was staying right behind him. You could see a bit of drama and some words exchanged. So I'm sure he wasn't happy. Tim has been known for doing this before. Years ago, when Kristen Gregoire, this would have been back in like 2010 or something like that, did a budget, there was this famous photo of Eyman standing behind her, holding his nose and doing this when she signed the budget bill that time, and that was kind of a funny, famous photo. But he didn't do that this time. He was just there saying, I think when they you could see this interaction. He said he was just there to respectfully disagree with the bill, so or respectful opposition, I think is what he said. Then there's another question here, 97 TJ asking, how can we make Bobby the Ferg go away? Well, one is you have to boot him out of office, and that's going to be a lot easier to do if you have somebody running for office against him. So that does help a lot. The other thing is you can recall him, but I don't think that's, again, there's a lot of work involved in that, so it's always possible. But mostly it just, start recruiting good people, planning and preparing them to run for office. It's really important. It astounds me sometimes. People are willing to put in 100 times more the energy to recall somebody than they will into finding and recruiting and training good people to run for office. And that imbalance in motivation, which I understand, but that imbalance in motivation is just a different, we would have a little bit more benefit right now if in the last 10 or 15 years we spent some time, even a modicum of time, just a marginal little bit of time, recruiting and training and supporting good candidates to run for office. And we just typically don't do that. Somebody mentions that the recall process requires nearly 1 million signatures for a statewide position. I believe that that's true because the threshold of signatures is higher than it is for an initiative. So it's a lot of signatures. However, judging from how Let's Go Washington people have been in the past, they actually could probably be capable of organizing that kind of an operation. And it's always easier to get more people to sign a recall petition. It's a lot easier to get those signed. People are always happy to do that. Did you have something to do with Tim's appearance at the bill signing? And is that why you're in hiding? No. Michael Case asked this question. No, I didn't have anything to do with Tim. Tim's his own guy. In fact, I haven't talked to Tim in a couple weeks now, so I'll have to talk to him soon to find out what the real story was. I'm sure there was some drama behind the scenes. But no, I'm not in hiding. I wasn't able to pull off there were some problems didn't have anything to do with me specifically, but there was a challenge in scheduling at the studio, so I wasn't able to get into it today. And rather than go a week without another live stream, I'm trying to learn how to do this semi-adequately in a remote setting, which is essentially what I'm doing right now. So hopefully I'll be interested in your feedback on this. I don't really like the orientation up and down. I think it's a little bit better if it's a landscape design. I got some other technical things, but regardless, this is how it's working out, and just let me know if you guys like it or what you do like or don't like. It's kind of a cheesy place here, but hopefully it'll be okay. This is when I'm on the road or I'm not at the studio, it's just never going to be as quality of lighting or anything like that. Let's see. Somebody is Shatona Thomas saying that we need to see if we can get the ACLJ or ACLU, and Jay Seklo. Oh, looking into this crap going on. Yeah, maybe. You can't just outsource your freedom to somebody else. And I think a lot of people on our side think that there's some miracle that somebody's coming to save you. There's nobody coming to save you. The inevitable reality is that nobody's coming to save us. We have to save ourselves. And that involves there's no magic bullet to this process. There's no super magic solution. And you can't rely on the other side and the craziest, no matter how crazy they get, no matter how much it offends and alienates people, that makes it easier for you to oppose them politically and expose the truth about them. But they still got whatever's left of the mainstream media. They sold their souls long ago. And the political class and the bureaucracy, and we essentially have a platinum-priced government, the platinum price garbage government right now. So it's not very fun when you're paying platinum prices for garbage return. So that's what we're doing. Let's see. Greg Patnud, what are we going to do about the permit to purchase a firearm that governor signed today, HB 1163? Well, that one is inevitably going to be in federal court. I'm sure it will be. Only an idiot would take that up at the state court level. There is no way to prevail. Our judges are thoroughly and absolutely comprehensively corrupt on this subject, and they will never be reformed. None of those judges are going to be reformed on that. They are not capable, and they're politically ostracized if they do see, if they're capable of reading the Constitution and recognizing the English that the Constitution's written in, they'll be ostracized and removed from office by the hard left, which is who put them there in the first place. So they don't, and the conservatives in our infinite stupidity have just decided to ignore the judicial races and not get involved or treat them as some kind of like somehow you're going to have miraculously good people to get in there, and you won't. And instead, we have the worst human beings we can find, and we've stuffed them in the judiciary. And so we have some really bad judges that we have to remove right now. Let's go here. Will you be able to help guide more for each area that people want to look into? I'm assuming you're referring to this is from Christy and Mike Fisk. Will you be able to help guide more for each area that people want to look into? And I want to look at the city of Spokane, but I don't know how to start. And this is the next part of this was thank you for coming to Spokane and speaking with my husband and I after. So you must have been in one of the Doge training classes, or you were at the Caper event this last Friday where I did kind of a mini Doge classes. Yeah, I'm happy to work with people on the more specific things. I am starting to hand out those some of those examples in my flyers the handouts I have at the training events where they are I'm detailing some of the areas that you can start looking at, and I'm going to be providing some more of those as I move along. And I'm basing that sometimes on people's questions. Motivating people to get involved is one thing, and then the details of the first step are always the hardest. It's easy for somebody to say, hey, I want to create a YouTube channel, but then you have to decide, what are you really going to talk about, or how are you going to organize this, and what do you want the channel to be? All these other decisions you have to go down. So when you say it's easy to hold the government accountable, and then you have to decide exactly where you're going to look. The one thing I always tell people is follow the money. The reality is that you will learn almost everything you need to know about government if you're willing to dig into the finances first. The money ends up exposing the truth in almost every area of government as you dig into the money. Where's it going? Who's getting it? Why? What are the relationships with the elected officials? Which part of the budget seem to be particularly weird? Who are those vendors? Who runs those companies or those entities, those nonprofits that are getting the grant grifting operations going? How are they related to the elected officials or the senior level bureaucrats? Who's married to who or sleeping with who, and how are they tied into the money, and where is it going? How much money are they stealing? How much money are they wasting? There's all kinds of opportunities. You're going to find all of that if you dig into the budget and get familiar with it. It always starts with the money, and that's where you find almost everything. So I'm happy to focus on it. If I was in the city of Spokane, looking at the city of Spokane, the biggest grift that's going on out there, and it's just exploding, is the homeless industrial complex in that city. Lisa Brown is a thoroughly corrupted bureaucrat politician, right? So she was in the state Senate. She lost her race for the Congress at the time. She comes back into the Department of Commerce, which she just simply used as her own personal political piggy bank, and she bribed an inordinate and disproportionate number of grants to the city of Spokane, where she was planning to run for office as mayor, which it was successfully bought her the mayor's office through those Department of Commerce grants. And once she got in there, she's immediately basically taken all the taxpayer funds and just squandering it. The city of Spokane looks worse now than it ever has in state history, directly as a result of her leadership. And it was already kind of going down that way with some of the other people that had been on that council before. But now you see her just doubling down on dumb and corruption. So she's just kicking all that cash out to all these grant grifting operations. I don't know how many of them are tied into organized crime, drug distribution, money laundering fronts. Who knows? It's hard to know until you dig into it. But there's a lot of opportunity to expose the truth. And that's one that I would really be spending some time looking at. It's not the only one, but it's definitely one I'd be digging into because it's just so obvious if you go to Spokane and start looking at it. That's where I would look at it right now. Magic Mirror. Anyone know where I can get my hands on a copy of the state constitution? Well, the answer is yes, in the sense that you can get a copy of it online. It's very easy to get a copy of it there. when I was working at the Freedom Foundation, we used to print them off periodically, and those old green copies of the state constitution, I think, were really good. I mean, they've made a couple changes since then, but I always found those to be super handy. I would love to publish another copy of the state constitution again. It takes a bit of time to publish it, but anybody can do it, and it would be worth it to get a copy of the state constitution and be distributing that with. I actually think it's beneficial if you put the federal constitution in there as well, and the Declaration of Independence and some other basic documents. But it is definitely worth getting that out there. And you can buy them, by the way, right now. If you go to the state, there's like a little store at the state capitol down underneath the rotunda. And I know you can buy state constitutions there as well if you want to. But there's a lot of them floating around. When I was at the Freedom Foundation, we printed thousands of them, and I know I handed out a lot of them over the years when I worked there back in the day. Let's see. And yes, there's somebody in here, Long Trailside, mentioning Washington gun law, and I agree. Washington gun law is one of the best. One of the best locations that websites, YouTube channels, really, where they discuss gun issues in Washington State. That's where I go to look at Bill's analysis of some of these issues, and I would find it rare that I would disagree with his assessments. I mean, you'll always have some disagreements, but generally, I think that's just a great channel. I was talking to him at an event that we were both at down in Clark County the other day, and I'm thinking we might end up doing something together at some point in time. It's just a matter of kind of working on the collaboration. And, you know, we're both busy running around doing different things. So anyway, that's how it goes. Thunderstriker, Glenn, where are you right now? Is this your new studio? This is not my new studio. This is a random shed on my property that I've just decided to quickly use in a pinch because I couldn't get to the studio today because it wasn't available for me today. So I'm doing it this way. I expect by next week I'll be back in the regular studio. I am in the process, hopefully, of getting a new studio set up. That's been a long time coming, but there's still some time that we have before I'm ready to do that now. TZ Burton, yep, unusual setup today. Not the one I would like to normally have. Let's see. Somebody in here is mentioning, I'll just mention this because Greg, signature requirements for state positions. This is statewide positions. Recall petition requires 25% of the total number of people that were voted for that position in the last general election. For county and lower, it's 35%, and that's correct. And that's why it's generally been, when they did the recall petition a couple years ago on the, was it North Mason Fire District? I did a video about this a little while ago. That was, they got the signatures in like a day. So, but it's a small district. When we were going to go out and collect signatures on the Tenino City Council, city councilman at the time, I remember, the signature threshold was quite achievable, actually. When they were collecting signatures a couple times for other bigger counties, it's been a little bit harder at times. It really depends on how many, how organized you are to really go out and do that. Let's see. Anyone interested? So this is David Pullen saying, anyone interested in seeing the emails I had with Reichdahl about ADA rights for the Zoom meeting to be accessible to deaf, and the irony of this meeting being about accessibility, not accessibility, ask. No, I mean, I think it's great, but make them public. Don't hold them secret. Keeping those things secret just ensures nobody else gets to see them. So find a way to put them out there and get them exposed to more people. TZ Burton, can you cover SB 5375, which is the state violating the First Amendment rights requiring clergy to disclose confessions? Yeah, this is this was a very aggressive attack almost exclusively on Catholics. And the Democrats in Washington State just hate Catholics. I mean, there's no way you can possibly define that party any way other than just as pure hatred directed at Catholicism in general. And the inevitable conflict that occurs with that particular bill requiring the clergy to basically expose what happens in the confession booth really sets the conflict for clergy that take their job seriously and believe and actually believe in the sanctity of the confession booth. then I think that's going to be a problem. It's kind of it's just a ridiculous um, bill. But of course, again, you have to realize that no one hates you more that if you're religious than the Democrat Party, and they repeatedly demonstrate this time and time again with their bills that they always propose. They don't believe religion should exist. They attack anybody who is religious unless they can use you as a just a fig leaf to cover some level of abuse they plan on inflicting on somebody else. Generally, that's just the way it is. So I'm sorry, and that's an abusive bill. It is absolutely generating a conflict between the Catholic Church and state government right now. It's also, of course, setting itself up for a First Amendment challenge, and it seems federally that would probably be where it goes most likely. Vertical phone stream. Yeah, this is funny. Vertical phone stream making millennials proud. Yeah. Actually, I was just having problems getting it to stream it in a different way, and so that's what I'm doing today, guys. This isn't probably how I'm going to do it normally, unless I'm in tight spot in the future as I'm kind of going around. But I didn't have a lot of time to get myself up to speed on this, so hopefully this is adequate for those of you who are logging in. Let's see. Greg Anderson, famous words. No one's coming to save you. Shout out at the Endless Endeavors pod. Yeah, we need allies. We've tried through legal means, but we definitely need some allies. That's Magic Mirror saying that. Let's see. Let me go down here. Let's see. The unemployment for striking workers case, ICOM 1020. I think you're just asking about the bill that they signed that gave unemployment for striking workers, and that would force Boeing and others to move out. Yeah, maybe, but everybody thinks they're going to get forced. Listen, the fact that Microsoft's laying off 3% of the workforce right now, and they're doing well financially, I think that's an indication that some of these big businesses are, and obviously you saw them shift out of Seattle with the dumb tax moves there. We were inevitably going to lose some business in Washington State. They'll leave, and that means you're going to lose some jobs. Bureaucrats don't care, don't think they do. They don't care at all. Neither do the politicians. They don't care at all. In fact, I think they're happy about losing jobs and businesses because they'll view that as these are workers who might not vote for me next time. That's why you have situations like New York had it before Giuliani, where they were just happy to destroy the city because they felt like what they were doing is chasing out the people who might not vote for them. Same with Detroit or Baltimore or places like that. You kind of see that behavior sometimes. That being said, the big businesses can't totally move on a dime. They can move pretty quick, certainly faster than government. But the question with that striking workers thing is less of an issue for Boeing or a big company. It's more going to be for the teachers union. And are we going to be encouraging strikes from the teachers union? Now, my guess is they'll wait a year until people kind of forget about it, and then they'll take advantage of it, and they'll encourage parents to pull their kids out of public school even faster, and that does seem to be what they would do. Let's see. This is a question I think right now that somebody asked here, saying from Mind Blown Watcher, are people being told to reach out to the appropriate office to report violations of the executive orders? Is anyone in Washington looking at the executive orders? Sure. I mean, a few thousand people in Washington are looking at the executive orders. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily doing anything about it. And remember, I think there's a lot of people that do follow. They probably contact whatever they think is the best group of people in D.C. or in the federal government, and they report what they think are violations. But tracking it and presenting it in a path that makes it a usable document or a reasonable piece of information is a different story. And one of the things that I think is challenging for people, the average citizen, to do, and it's not fair, it's just the way it is. If you look at, say you think you have something and you call up and you sound like a crazy person, put yourself in the shoes of whoever's taking your phone call on the other side. They're really not going to take you that seriously because they get hundreds of calls like that, probably on a weekly, if not daily basis. And so sounding crazy, sounding ignorant, sounding unhinged is probably not the path to convince them that you're serious. putting together a rational argument and having it laid out and in writing so that it can be shared and shown and demonstrated and validated is a better way of doing it. Now, it's not the same thing, but if you look at that, even that petition to Governor Ferguson that I filed on Friday with the governor, with his office. Now, it's not a legal document in the sense that you had to have process service and have it get notified, and there's a certain amount of time he has to respond or anything like that. But it was done in a good, solid, legally intelligent, laid out path, explaining the statute, what was violated, what the evidence of that violation is. It had 100 pages of documents that were carefully referenced and collated that indicated, which of those violations were found in the public records and how they were found. It was pretty easy to actually lay it out for somebody to realize it's a serious sequence of evidence and issues that clearly show these four commissioners on the Fish and Wildlife Commission are corrupt and dishonest, and certainly putting the state in a greater legal jeopardy than they would otherwise have to be, beyond just the dishonest and illegal things they did in that office. That's laid out in a way that's understandable. So the likelihood of that going somewhere is much more significant than if you just say everybody, all the Democrats in office are treasonous, and Trump needs to come in and do something about it. That's pretty much just not going to go anywhere. That's not effective. Now, the specific things that I do think on the executive orders that are making an impact are the Title IX and Title VI investigations into the school system and the litigation that's probably coming out of it moving forward. The pushback against the sanctuary state and city laws that are occurring right now in cooperation or coordination with some law enforcement, despite the state's sanctuary laws, and the likelihood that some of those laws are going to blow back. You see the Adams County case, where the feds are getting involved there. I suspect they're going to get involved in Pierce County and other counties as well, where the stupid sanctuary city laws and state laws are just going to become blown up for what they are. The other thing that you're going to see is, I think in June, based on the executive order that came out on election integrity and the non-U.S. citizens that are registered to vote in Washington state and who have voted, some of them have voted, as the Department of Homeland Security finally releases those databases, which, by the way, as I mentioned in previous videos, those were the same databases that myself and other activists were trying to get a hold of during the first Trump administration, so that we could expose this exact issue back then. And the Trump administration, number one, didn't give anything to us. So now you have a situation that's very, very different than it was back then, where they're actually looking at Homeland Security itself, which has access to these databases, and having them go out and expose the number of non-U.S. citizens who registered to vote. And of course, why that matters is that it just simply starts that process of exposing not just that Hobbs is a liar when he says the voting system is a problem. I mean, I figure Hobbs is probably the sacrificial lamb that Ferguson and the Democrats plan to throw in the bonfire of the problems of their election system. But it's really more about identifying why there's significant election reform that needs to occur, including eliminating mail-in voting and guaranteeing that there's ID and proof of citizenship before they can vote. And since Washington State's been giving driver's licenses to non-U.S. citizens since the early 90s, and widely to illegals, certainly for the past 20 years or so, there's going to be some problems, and we'll have to see how it goes. But it really depends on the specific executive order. Executive orders are different than laws passed by Congress. They are. Please don't pretend like they aren't. They still, though, move the ball in a direction that, one of the things that's obvious is we're going to still have to get Congress eventually is going to have to catch up to where the executive orders are going on some of these issues. There's graphics guru Glenn. Were you able to watch the Trump and Putin call yesterday? The answer is no. I read about it, but I didn't watch it. Let's see. Mind blown watcher. There are DEI and energy focused executive orders that could really stop a lot of the financial bleeding in the state. Yes, there are, but they're not going to follow them until they're forced to. That's just how it is. And of course, as you mentioned earlier, or somebody else mentioned here earlier, let me see if I'm restored chat. There we are. Sorry, this is a little technical issue I just caused myself here. As we dig into this, sorry, I'm trying to figure out what. Okay, there it is. As we dig into it, we're going to find there's a lot of opportunity to save money, and the DEI stuff is obvious. They just squandered. again, I can't possibly emphasize this enough. The Washington state government agencies are thoroughly and completely comprehensively squandering your money at every opportunity they can. And there's a lot of different ways they do it. It's not just, and the Doge at a federal level, I think, was wonderful because it made it cool to actually look at a government once again. But also the fact that it really did expose like things like, software licenses that went unused for decades. And they were just paying to renew these licenses that nobody used, but you were paying millions and tens of millions of dollars to waste your tax dollars on stupid software licenses that nobody used or needed. And you're going to have equivalent things like that. That's not necessarily corruption. It's certainly incompetence. But again, my definition of government bureaucracy is that it is a mountain of corruption concealed by a notion of incompetence. There are some fish swimming in there trying to do the right thing, but most of it's just a pile of incompetence covering up the corruption. And one of the things you do with the Doge Washington is just dig in and try to find the truth about what's actually going on in government and learning how to do that more, which I think is actually pretty important. Let's see, unemployment for striking workers. Let's see, keep going down here. Let's see. Yes, the J-Dog, $9 billion in new state budget. Yep, biggest increase in state history. Yes, it is largest tax increase in state history. So much for fiscal responsibility, which actually never existed. I've never seen it exist in the state before, and it certainly hasn't since I was a kid, at least. So just more waste for less quality. That's usually how it is. Ferguson signed HB 1296, gutting parental Bill of Rights. What's the Republicans' next move? That's T.Z. Burton. And as I mentioned earlier, I suspect it's not so much the Republicans, although they'll support it. I anticipate the next move is probably more in the Let's Go Washington camp. What is Brian Haywood's going to do? And that is the question, and probably the question everybody's asking. And he's been interviewed quite a bit on this, and it sounds like he's heavily engaged and pushing back on that. Let's see, Jason Fisher. I appreciate you taking the time to do this video. What's your thoughts on the judge denying dismissal of the murder trial of the state trooper? Oh, this is interesting. Thanks for asking that question, Jason. This was a case that was decided, or actually it was yesterday. There was this illegal alien killed a state patrolman by being drunk and driving incredibly high rate of speed, and he crashed and he killed the state patrolman who had pulled over somebody else on the side of the freeway up in Snohomish County. And it was clearly, and the guy was obviously at fault, and it was clearly his fault. He was under the influence of drugs and alcohol and not a U.S. citizen. And so what happened is somewhere in the process of him being prosecuted for killing that state patrolman, there was an email that they found from like some employee inside the Snohomish County prosecutor's office who had mentioned this guy's non-U.S. citizenship status apparently to ICE or some group like that, somewhere along the way. It was weak sauce, but it was the Democrat or the defense attorneys for this illegal alien jumped on it, and they were all certain that if they could get the judge to have this hearing, that's the perfect, they could demonstrate that there was prosecutorial misconduct because one of these employees violated Washington state sanctuary state laws and referenced the fact that this guy was in jail, and that he needed to be turned over to that they were revealing his not the fact he wasn't a U.S. citizen to ICE. And they actually were able to get a hearing for that stupid motion. But the judge, probably in part because of all the attention that came to it and the seriousness of the crime, threw out that motion and didn't take it seriously. And so that did not work for them. It was more absurd, and it was the theater of the absurd that they even had a hearing on this issue. So anyway, we'll just have to see how it goes. Let's see, Charles. Let's see. Let's see. So anyway, the Republicans on that one, I anticipate, like I said, the state trooper one, you had the Republicans making a lot of comments about that. And Brandy Cruz did a really good video on this, and a lot of attention was spent on that one, and as it deserved. And the judge made the right decision. And again, if you put enough political pressure on those judges, or at least attention to the stupidity of the crazies like Judge Zip in Thurston County, who, if a criminal tries to kill you and fails, Judge Zip will make sure she releases that criminal back out in the community so they get another shot at you. So that's how it goes. Mind blown watcher. Wow, got an ADU approved in Washington. Permit costs more than the shed. Well, if you did, then yes, it depends which county you're in, but yeah, that's not too good. Very expensive. Michelle Andrews has a question here. Can you comment on an invasion doesn't require habeas corpus to remove a person who doesn't go through the proper procedures to live and stay here? Yeah, there's a big argument. It's an interesting thing to me usually because the left doesn't believe in process at all. They just simply believe in power. As a general rule, when you look at the left and the bureaucracies and the politicians that they support, they're fully happy to run roughshod over every process that exists out there. They'll take away your firearms. They'll destroy your kids' future in the terrible education system. They'll support criminals and ignore all process and putting them in jail. They'll release them early. They'll violate every rule that exists. They'll have no process at all when they import 10 million illegal aliens. They'll throw out all process, everything. They'll let fraud run rampant at DSHS and LNI and all the other state agencies that give out programs. Probably 25-30% of their money is stolen or fraudulently attained. They don't care. They completely ignore the process there. Suddenly, for the first time in decades, the left discovers process, and they're applying it, of course, only in this limited subset, and they invent new process that doesn't exist to try to give special treatment for non-U.S. violent criminals, which apparently has become the primary constituency of the Democrats in Washington state and other states like Washington, where that's suddenly going to be where they throw all this process out here. They'll take away your freedoms, destroy your future with no process at all. And on this, they want to have all this process to protect us from, or to protect violent criminals from releasing them and send them back to the country where they don't have, since they don't belong here. Or like, even if they aren't totally violent, but they're just out running scams or stealing from you or ripping off the federal government, stealing money that way, whatever bad behavior they have, DUIs, whatever, they want to hold on to those people because those are the immigrants they want. And they've decided to just double down on this in a really pretty extreme way. So we'll see how it goes. Charles, you're asking a question about Senate Bill 5077. And what can we do about it? I'm not going to look that bill up right now. I don't remember. I mean, I recognize the number, but I don't remember what that does. So you have to tell me about it. And then I can answer it better because I'll know what the law, I just don't have them all memorized. Irregardless of the First Amendment, mandatory reporting of child abuse, sexual exploitation of children is a good idea. First Amendment does not allow illegal acts, nor should it protect them. Greg, this is Greg's comment. And that's true. The issue is this violation of the confidentiality of the clergy, which has actually been something that it really more applies to the Catholic Church than I'm aware of any other churches or religions. So, yeah, I really think that you're in a situation here where you've treaded in it and beyond where you needed to go. So, anyway. Graphics Guru, what do you think about Vance being a Never Trump critic years ago prior to them being his right-hand man? Well, I think if you look through, I think J.D. Vance has repeatedly explained that this change in his life as he's gone down. And listen, I don't think this is even that unusual because you'll have an opinion about somebody that could be wrong. And they can prove you wrong. I mean, I think that happens. There's certainly times when I've had low opinions of politicians, or I've been certainly distant. You know, I'm assuming that they're going to be as corrupt as everyone else, and they'll surprise me. And when they surprise me because of their actions speak louder than words. I don't care really about their words. I do care about their actions. And if their actions show that they've reformed or they've turned around and they're actually doing good things, I don't think there's any reason not to change your opinion about them. And it looks to me like that's what J.D. Vance did in this case with Trump, and he's changed his he's changed his approach there. So we'll see how it goes. This American Mutt, you're asking about whether I got a message and that your phone keeps deleting your info. I don't know why your phone would do that, so I probably didn't get your message. Jason Fisher, is the police funding bill real? There are people claiming it's a bait and switch. Jason, good question. And this is something I've been wondering about for a while, because Bob Ferguson has no history at all anywhere in his career, whether when he was in the King County Council or in the Attorney General's office, of caring at all or doing anything to actually help reduce the crime wave in Washington state. If anything, Bob Ferguson facilitated extensively, especially with violent sex predators and early release of criminals, and ignoring the problems of the Department of Corrections, where the software glitch was allowing these violent criminals to get out of jail early. Bob Ferguson did nothing. I mean, when Chaz Chop happened, Bob Ferguson took a vacation and disappeared. I mean, he's hidden and avoided dealing with all the significant crime issues that have come up in our state during his entire political tenure. The only time he ever gets involved is when he thinks he can beat up on somebody and extract money from them to use that as part of like his chicken tuna check program, or beat up on somebody like Tim Eyman because he can bankrupt Tim Eyman and therefore get rewarded by his political donor class for maintaining the high and ridiculous and absurd tax levels that Washington State has. So essentially, that's who Bob Ferguson is. And he realized that he scored poorly when it came to public safety with the public. And that particularly matters in that Tri-County area, Snohomish, King, Pierce area. That's 48% of the voters that live there. And generally, that area in particular was getting pretty soured on the Democrats and their soft on crime policies, which they've doubled down on now. I would say the Democrats are just more than soft on crime. They're full-throated enthusiasm for the most violent criminals they can get out on the street early. And Bob Ferguson was really part of that. And so he had to pretend when he was running for governor that, especially because he was running against a sheriff, that with Reichert, he needed to like try to close that weakness on his side. The risk that the only way that Ferguson could do that is pretend like he cared enough that he wanted to throw this $100 million worth of increased hiring of police officers, which the Democrats wouldn't put into the budget. And that became a sticking point, a big fight behind the scenes, and the caucus battle behind the scenes. So now suddenly Bob Ferguson gets his $100 million, supposedly for law enforcement. And my guess is that that'll turn out to be a bait and switch in the sense that it probably, some small amount of it will go to augment the costs of various law enforcement agencies in King County and, maybe in some of the urban centers. He'll use it mostly as like a bribery scheme, where you're just bribing in trying to influence the areas that you think you need more votes in. But at the end of the day, it's probably not going to make a big difference, especially if you're shutting down Department of Corrections, you're encouraging no bail release, you're doing what Judge Zip does and several other judges in Washington State where they just release the most violent criminals to give them another chance to kill, rape, or murder more when they're out in the public. And Ferguson does nothing about that. So we're going to have to see where it's really going. Let's see. Thunderstriker, you got a question here. What are your thoughts on people wait a second. No. What are your thoughts on people not knowing what Trump is making a deal with Qatar? Well, I don't quite understand what you're asking there. Is Trump making a deal with Qatar? I think he is. Is it good or not? I don't know. I really don't know on these. I don't buy these government to government deals that people have done since I was a kid when they travel around the world and they announce these big, interactions with other countries. I mean, maybe they come through and it turns out to be something, but I do think that frequently our country we get the raw end of the deal because people believe. And listen, if you met the politicians that these foreign and bureaucrats that these foreign governments are meeting, you would think that America was full of idiots too. I mean, look at how corrupt and dishonest these people are. And certainly not the highest quality character or even high IQ people. I mean, some of these are exceptionally stupid people too. These other countries have got to be looking at us just saying, my God, America's run by idiots. And so I think they just take advantage of us partially because of that. And I don't blame them when you look at the clowns that we have in government and what they're running around and changing the stories all the time. It's got to be difficult to get anything done that is going to stick, but we'll see how it goes. Let's see. T.T. Burton, how will Real ID affect our election rolls? Since law-abiding Americans have to have this to board a plane, how can the state say you don't have to show ID to vote now? Well, the state has said that you don't have to show ID to vote since 2011. So when they closed the last polling stations in Pierce County, which was actually the last holdout in the state. For those of you who live in a red state and you think that it's only a blue state problem, your auditors are a big part of the problem because all the red state counties in Washington State decided to go to all mail-in voting before they were even legally obligated to do so. And it turned out to be a disaster, and your counties were the first ones that had no ID requirements for voting, and they've had it now for a long time. Now, this executive order, which I think you're referring to, TZ, more than anything else, basically says you can't vote without real ID, right? That's the argument there, at least in a federal election, which is where the feds do have clear and obvious jurisdiction. The question then becomes, when they're getting ready to vote, are you going to have... we have a garbage driver's license. It means nothing because the states trash the value of that driver's license by handing it out to everybody that they want to, with no proof of citizenship at all. And they do it every single day at the Department of Licensing. Nobody can tell me they don't. I've got so many whistleblowers from inside who said they've been doing it personally every day. They've been at work. It's just been going on for a long time. So now the question becomes, how does this executive order and the addressing, how is it going to really affect the election rolls? And the biggest part of this is not the real ID. It's going to be the list of people who are here on visas, right? They're legally here. So you know exactly who they are. And many of them do get driver's licenses, which is fine because they're here legally and they're working in our country, H-1B visas, student visas, whatever it is. And then they're registered to vote, sometimes even against their will, or sometimes even against their knowledge. And they're registered to vote. And the question is how many voted or how many people voted for them during that time. Now, that'll be a smaller percentage than the number of people that are registered to vote, but it's going to show that we have garbage election rolls, which anybody who's bothered to look at them knows that that's true. And once that becomes much more obvious, because you couldn't really comprehensively prove this at a bigger scale, just because I had dozens of people show me their ballots and they weren't U.S. citizens, and many times they had fought to try to get off the rolls, and the auditors and the Secretary of State refused to remove them from the rolls. You're just going to have all these scenarios popping up all the time where these people are registered to vote, and when the feds come out and actually release these lists, it's going to show you just how bad it is. Plus, I think they're also planning to release a list of illegal immigrants that have also been registered to vote in Washington State, which will be probably interesting. That's going to be pretty significant. Let's see, Motor Gong concerning SB 5375, which is the one anti-Catholic bill. The Archdiocese of Seattle, Spokane, and Yakima released public announcements stating they'll gladly go to jail rather than to abide by that law. Great response by the church. And if they did say, I haven't read it, so I'm glad to hear that if they said it in the sense that they're standing up at least for their belief. I just don't like these endless series of compromises. You just have to stop, you just have to keep pushing back. This American Mutt, I stopped telling people, I don't know what you think I stopped telling people doing, because they do think I'm crazy. I love numbers, however. Where money they had disappear go? Where did the money they have disappear go? I'm sorry, that's the question I think that you're asking. Well, it varies because it depends on which money you're talking about. There's a lot of money that gets stolen and wasted in just, programs. The Nigerian fraud scheme with the Employment Security Department, but I think that gets dwarfed. That was almost $1 billion, right? I think it ended up being about $600 million, supposedly, that went to this Nigerian fraud scheme. But somehow internal employees were involved in turning off all the security features. And who were those internal employees that did that? Well, the state auditor refused to reveal it. The FBI didn't reveal it. Nobody revealed it. So we don't know who they are, or who they really are, or even for sure if they know who they are. And it'll just be the person floating around the lake one day, and you wonder what happened to them because they took their bribe and somebody else got all that money. I don't know where it went. It didn't really go to Nigeria, so that's just a scam. Anyway, there's a lot of problems with how much money is wasted that way. You have the grant grifting scams, which are either political payoffs or just simply money laundering operations for the Sinaloa drug cartel or other types of scams that they're running. And they use the grant as a good way to just steal the money. Sometimes they might be funneling that money into political stuff, but probably most of it's just stolen personally before it ever gets there. And that's the problem. You just have to dig down the rabbit hole on this money. Follow the money and you will learn a lot. So let's see. No law that is repugnant to the Constitution, Bill of Rights will stand. No, but it might start. It might stand for a little while until we get rid of it. T.Z. Burton, do Democrats understand immigration is not the authority of the states, but of the federal government? No, they don't. Can our Fox News blonde start going after states? Foxy blonde. I don't know who you're actually referring to there, but sure, they can start to expose what's going on in the states. I mean, I'm seeing some of these stories out there right now. We're not the only ones. Massachusetts, New York, especially New York with their with the big lawsuit that's going on there. Essentially, you could file the same lawsuit against Washington, California. I see a bunch of stuff, or Colorado and Arizona and Pennsylvania. You're seeing a lot of the stuff starting to happen out there. Okay, Glenn, are you referencing commissioners in, or is there also a zip? There's a judge zip, not a commissioners in. I'm talking about judge zip in that case. That's Chucks and Pearl's question, and I'm talking about judge zip in Thurston County. So Thurston County Superior Court Judge Zip. She's got a history of releasing violent criminals, and then they go out and then they kill people, or they attempt to kill people if they didn't the first time. Let's see, I'm part of groups that are connected to DEI. I blame the government for doing so much tyranny to make good people who want better change higher, uptake something good and destroy it and make it nonsense. Well, that's what government does well. Listen, it's no different than like the conservation district that was originally set up in the 30s, supposedly helping ignorant farmers learn how to better conserve the soil and their land and the water. And now they've essentially just become mostly environmental. Well, they're one of two things. Conservation districts are either just environmental organizations that pilfer cash from the taxpayer or grant money from the feds. Then they distribute it to people to help destroy more farmland. Supposedly it's salmon habitat restoration or whatever they want to call it. But essentially the people who run those contracts are grifting operations mostly to do the work that they supposedly do. They'll bribe a few farmers along the way to be window dressing for the whole program. And that's the best it gets, the conservation district. The other type is maybe you'll have some set up in Eastern Washington or where it's more conservative, and they're just simply good old boy internal ways of taking taxpayer cash and running your farm operation at a higher profit level. And that's essentially what it is. It's an insider deal. Nothing good about it. It was started with good intentions. It probably did some good originally in the first 10 years it existed. And now for the past 70 years, it's been mostly wasting our money. And of course, setting up areas of corruption. Let's see. I'm trying to get it to questions here, guys. Questions. And if you got a question, ask me a question. But there's a lot of commentary right now, and I'm not finding the questions here. There's a good point, though. Mind Blown Watcher, he just mentioned something out here. Most federal pages, meaning most federal agencies, they do have easily accessible websites with a way to message and report any violations you're aware of. Cite sources and spell check, but it's easy to do. Yeah, and I mean, here's, little hints, just some little hints to people. If you want to be taken just a little bit more seriously, if you send in complaints that are 100% all caps and no spaces, no one's going to read it or take you seriously, and nobody should. If you, hint number 2, if you don't use spell check and you sound like illiterate and nobody can even understand because the syntax and the structure of the sentence is so confusing, nobody's going to take you seriously. If you, number 3, just simply go on rants that have nothing attached or even a reference as to what the violation is, nobody's going to take you seriously. Number 4, if you just go generic, everybody's a tyrant or everything's evil or everything's bad, nobody's going to take you seriously. They can't use that as a basis for a complaint or a basis for any kind of investigation because it's meaningless. And if you've ever worked in one of these, I've seen these before. You can get them. You can get records requests and some of the stuff sometimes too. When you stumble on this, you'll understand why there's a high level of cynicism in almost any agency that takes public complaints about anything, because 9 out of 10 of these complaints are, you can't even read them. You can't even understand what somebody's saying. It's not even clear. Or they rant off on tangents that may have nothing to do with that agency or some other issue. And so what happens is the unhinged or the bitter critter or the weird way of explaining something, they may very well be right. There may be a basis of truth behind that complaint. I believe there often is. But if you can't communicate it effectively at all, then you're just not going to go anywhere at that agency, and they're going to round file it with everything else. Now, they will take other things seriously if they're well laid out and documented, and they'll follow up with you usually. I think that it is important to, when you think there's a violation, you've documented it well enough, that's when you start to work it, you put something together. The Sportsmen's Association Foundation brief that I turned in, the petition last Friday, was well written. And it was well written. You can look at it. It breaks down the summary. It breaks down the constitutional justification for how you file it. It breaks down the clarification for the governor's legal authority with history, obviously written by attorneys in the whole. But, you're writing something that serves as a foundational document to justify somebody else putting in lots of time to go out and get something done. And they're willing to go down that rabbit hole when it's laid out for them pretty easily. It's just easier for them to do it. It's hilarious. Sometimes people will send me these things like, go file this records request and you'll get 15 million documents. And somehow in those 15 million documents, you're going to find 2 that are really important. But I won't tell you what they are. It's a secret. No one's going to waste the time on that kind of explanation or suggestion. Nobody will. Nobody is serious. And so laying things out in a methodical, understandable, and rational way allows you to get some headway with the complaint or the explanation as to what's going on. The other thing I challenge you to do, and this is something this is more of a communication question. It's not a bad way to probably start wrapping up tonight's live stream here a little bit, but imagine you find a problem, whatever that problem is, and you want to convince people in your community that there's a problem there. You have to learn how to explain it in a way that most people can understand what's happening and why it's relevant and why it is a problem. And maybe you have a solution too. And so you can go down the road of here's the solution to this problem, or here's why somebody should investigate, or here's the money that disappeared. Right now, we're missing money in the Atrium facility where Thurston County has millions of dollars that are unaccounted for. That's a real issue. You can look down and through. You can show here's the contract that the TI work that the contractor filed with the city of Olympia, and it clearly shows it was a $2.5 million TI project. And over here, the county has billed the taxpayers, $9 million. Clearly, there's a disparity there that can't be explained by just a rounding error or some other little problem. It's significant. There's a lot of money missing. That starts, you're laying the facts out, you got budgets, you can really show this stuff. Let me think of one that happened recently. Oh, the Morton, the city clerk and treasurer that's going to prison now that she recently pled guilty on. I've done a video on this already. When she stole just under $1 million, that could have been discovered by citizens looking carefully at budget reports or bank statements. You could have figured out that she stole $311,000 from the cash payments that were made by employees or citizens on, I think it was a PUD bill or power bill that they had in town, or water bill. You could have also found the $512,000 that she stole from vendors with the fake vendor invoices. But you would have had to dig into this stuff. That could have been found. Now, I'm going to reiterate, they passed 9 years of audits before they finally did something to her. But that's true for all fraud. In fact, most fraud that's going on right now in Washington State, the government entities and employees who are committing the fraud are passing every state audit that comes their way. But if you dig into it and you really thoroughly dig into this in a way that the state auditor just doesn't, or ever, they don't really organize their audits to do this, you will find problems and issues. And not all of it's fraud. You might just find incompetent levels of stupidity, but whatever it is that you uncover and you share and show, I think you're going to be able to make more headway by raising those questions. And now you have facts, and here's a spreadsheet, and here's the credit card receipts. And by the way, employee XYZ, you decided to go out and spend $700 on a steak meal and lots of alcohol on the taxpayer dime when you were down in Las Vegas, and you charge it to the city card. And I think that's wrong, right? You can show stuff like that. You can show vendors who claim in their contracts that they were going to do this, and they were going to fix this park, and you can go out and say the park's not fixed, but the taxpayers still paid $150,000 for it anyway. There's a lot of opportunities. This stuff is endless. It's like a treasure hunt, and there's tons of treasure. Unfortunately, treasure are examples of corruption and incompetence and stupidity, but it's your tax dollars, and the more we find ways of reducing that, and then reducing that waste and reducing that fraud, I think the better off we're going to be. And it helps us hold the government accountable. No one's coming to save us. They aren't going to do it for us. They aren't going to clean themselves up. It's up to you and I. So anyway, thank you for bearing with me for an unusual live stream tonight in a not nearly the same kind of quality as I get in the studio where I normally do this. I hope this was okay for you. Again, I'll have my videos coming out later on this week. Got a couple topics I want to work on, and hopefully I do a good job filming those. Probably be filming them around Thursday. I anticipate they'll start launching into the weekend. If you're going to be tomorrow in Skagit County at the Doge training, I'm looking forward to seeing you there. Otherwise, we'll just stay engaged and involved. There's a lot of follow-up that we have to do. We need to hold government accountable, but it starts with you, starts with me, starts with our friends and people we can organize. neighbors and other people in the community. There's a lot of work that we have to do, and a lot of change and churn is likely to be coming in our state, not just as a result of the bad, dumb bills that Ferguson signed, but also as a result of things going on at the federal level. Some of them good, not all of them bad. We just have to be here to take advantage of it. So with that, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I'll be in the studio next week. I'm assuming I'm going to be doing it Tuesday at 5:30 next week. Let me know what you think about this format. I probably won't do too many like this in the future, but just let me know in the comment section down below. Hope all is well, guys. Have a good evening. Have a great week. We'll talk to you later.